Hi, I'm David Rettinger, and welcome to another episode of The Opposite of Cheating. Today, I'm with my old friend Holly Tatum, and we'll be talking about academic integrity broadly, and in particular in the context of honor codes, where Holly's a real expert on that topic. So, Holly, start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, and in your context.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I am a professor of psychology at Randolph College in Lynchburg, Virginia. Some of you may be more familiar with our older version of ourselves, which was Randolph-Macon Women's College, which we were for about 118 years before we went co-ed. We have a traditional student-run honor code at our school. And so I teach within an honor system. I actually went to a college that had an almost identical honor code system as Randolph does. And so I had some familiarity with that as a student. And I also serve as the single faculty representative on the Judiciary Committee, which is what we call our honor council, essentially. That's all students and have also served on the appeals board, which is one faculty member who has some experience with the judiciary system, who hears student appeals. So I guess as someone who does work in academic integrity, I teach. I do research on the topic of honor codes and some other various types of research related to academic integrity and cheating. And I also sort of participate in the system at our school. So I've been there, I've been here for 21 years. I teach psychology classes as well, a lot of research classes, which also relate again to research, misconduct and integrity. And so I feel like ethics kind of is a pervasive theme in everything that I do. When I work with students, I mentor many undergraduate students in research, both collaborative research, but also their capstone research. So it seems to come up very often in many different contexts for me.
Life as a small college faculty member, we really do have to do it all.
We do. Yeah.
Do you remember how you got started on this topic? How did the honor codes and honor councils really become such a big part of your life?
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I guess I could start at the beginning. When I was a student I went to Mary Baldwin College in Stanton, Virginia, and we had an honor code. And I was thinking about this term academic integrity, and when I was first introduced to it or first time I heard of it. And to be honest, as a student, we just kind of knew we were supposed to follow the honor code. I remember signing the honor code. Matriculate. You do a formal service where you hear a little bit about it. You sign your name. I'm going to agree to it. That sort of thing. And then I really don't remember hearing very much about the details of it or having faculty talk much about it. As a student, I just sort of intuitively knew what I was supposed to do. The one thing I'll say, which I think is really interesting aspect of sort of these traditional student run honor codes, is that the thing that I heard the most about with honor codes as a student were the benefits. I didn't really hear much about what happened behind closed doors, sort of like you might hear that maybe something was going on, but very vague information and really was not talked about much. But we all were sort of sold the notion of the honor code by the benefits that came along with it. And that we had self-scheduled exams, which is a real amazing part of being a student, knowing that you can take any one of your exams on any of the exam days, meaning you can sort of pace yourself. You know when you're ready to take an exam, you have a lot of flexibility. You can take them wherever on campus you wanted to, which meant I could go to the psychology building in the classroom where I took the class and take my final exam in that room. And so we could leave our backpacks anywhere. We could leave our stuff, things, doors unlocked. I mean, I think the benefits of it were what we really heard about the most. And when I fast forward that to when I took my job, it was actually my second tenure track job when I got to Randolph. And I had been at an institution that did not have an honor code. And I was very much excited and interested in the job that I could teach with an honor system. And so when I came into it, I really I sort of approached it like I did as a student, like, well, this is so great and there's so many benefits, but I did not really talk about it with my students. And you can imagine my horror as I started doing research on academic integrity and honor codes. And one of the most important things you're supposed to do is talk to students about it. And I thought, oh, I've done a terrible job. I have not done what my due diligence, I haven't done what I was supposed to do. So I have to say, doing research on honor codes has made me a much better teacher and professor and really improved my teaching and really the way that I frame things for my students, like assignments, the work that I'm asking them to do, assessments. I can frame it all around integrity. And I have a variety of ways I do that, which I can talk about more specifically. But it has really made me a better teacher for sure. So how I got into, oh, sorry, how
Oh
I
no,
got
you
into
go, you
it
go.
was really random. And actually, I have this book. Oh gosh, can you see it? This book was, I think, published in like 2011. I guess it's backwards. All right. It's called Teaching Ethically, and the American Psych Association published it, and they sent out one of those calls for authors. Hey, who wants to write, an article in this book about teaching ethically? And my colleague Beth Schwartz, who I've done several research studies with, said, "Hey, they're looking for somebody to write a chapter on honor codes, and we teach at a school with an honor code. We must know all about them." And then very quickly realized we knew almost nothing about the research on it. And so this book was about pedagogy and teaching. So we focused primarily on the ways in which the honor code supported pedagogy, student learning, relationships you built with students. And so that's how we started, and that's probably where I really got introduced to the idea and the larger concept of academic integrity, was writing that book chapter. But what came out of that book chapter was a long list of questions. As Beth and I read and tried to find information and research, we just had this list of questions we wanted to answer. And it was really hard to find, other than Don McCabe, who did so much of the research on honor codes. It was really hard to track down the research and find the experimental studies, or anything we could find that would tell us, well, why is there lower self-reported cheating on honor codes? But what is it? Why do you see that finding mentioned over and over again, but without a lot of detail around it? So that framed for us research questions, and then we decided this is what we want to do. We really want to answer some of these questions.
That's so what's the most surprising thing that you learned, in that whole big pile of stuff? What shocked you the most?
Let's see. What was so surprising? Okay, well, gosh, so many things. I think the one thing, the most surprising piece of information that came out of that initial reading of research on honor codes and cheating, essentially, was the fact that many research studies were showing that students didn't know what cheating was, or had varying definitions of what it was. But even more surprising, that faculty among themselves didn't really even agree on what constituted cheating. And so there was a lot of vague notions about what it was, or, oh, you kind of know what it is. It's sort of like that. Well, don't plagiarize when you write your paper. That's not really talking about academic integrity, right? Just like, don't plagiarize when you do this. So the idea that they had all these studies where they'd shown students, they'd ask them, "Hey, have you ever cheated before?" And then they show them the definition, and then the self-report goes way up, like, "Oh yeah, I've definitely done that." And so I felt like that was a really good starting point for understanding how honor code systems, and I use that word in our research. We often use the word honor code, and a lot of people just use honor codes as a very broad word or term. But typically, an honor code is within a whole system. And the system is the process of adjudication, the process of reporting, how sanctions are applied, everything around it. The code itself is often just like a statement about a shared values. And okay, we agree that we're all going to follow these rules, essentially. So the we were interested in how an honor code system, the existence of one, might facilitate students' understanding of what cheating was. Like if they attended a school with an honor code where maybe they talked about a little bit more, had more educational pieces that were built into the system. For example, did they have a better understanding of something being not honest? Right. So our first research study was just presenting these different scenarios and saying, is this cheating? Is this cheating? Is this cheating? And seeing if attending a school with a traditional versus a modified versus no honor code at all, if that made a difference in how their perceptions of these kind of different behaviors. So we sort of started there, and then we had a lot of other questions that we asked as well. But I think that was one of the big things that we were most interested in.
I know that one of the things that sets honor code folks' hair on fire is when people say honor codes don't work. Would you care to comment?
Wow, it seems like you might have witnessed me have a meltdown or something.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Holly.
um yeah, these blanket statements like, oh, honor codes don't work. Well, there's a lot of context missing if you ever see that headline anywhere that honor codes don't work, or if a frustrated colleague stops you in the grocery store and makes a big to do of like the honor code's not working, and you're like, okay, well, I have a lot of things to say about that actually. um Oftentimes people, well, first of all, this honor codes don't work, this broad statement often is referring to just having something on the books doesn't mean it works. And so a code written down somewhere in a document online in and of itself, yeah, that's not going to work by itself. There are all these layers that really are needed to help promote the honor code system, integrity. There's educational pieces, there's student involvement, peer-to-peer information, very important. And then there's pedagogy, obviously connected to all of that. So broad statements about honor codes don't work are often referring to just in and of themselves by themselves. And that there may be some truth to that. What I think about honor codes, how you measure whether or not an honor code works is not by the fact that someone breaks the code or cheats or, oh, there's a cheating scandal. That doesn't mean it didn't work. And this is a really important point that I like to make with faculty when they're sort of having a lot of questions or doubts about a system. Is just because someone breaks it doesn't mean it doesn't work, because students are going to cheat and we have to accept that that happens. And even within a system that educates them and helps them, you're still going to have students who decide, who make a decision to not follow those rules or not do their work with integrity. However, the system itself is built not just for the what happens when they do break it. It's also about the process of adjudication, student involvement, and recidivism, right? And how you educate students when they do make a mistake. And how you try, and this is a hard one for me, try to maintain some level of fairness and consistency in terms of how students are treated through that system.
Yes.
And when I said at the beginning that I was really excited to come to a college that had an honor system, it was because I had at my first school, which we did not have an honor code or system. And we also, I'm not even sure we had an academic integrity statement, probably buried somewhere deep. There was something about it. But I had an incident with a student who had plagiarized. And in one of these really, really different, I mean, the cut and paste, changing um, citations so you couldn't find them. I mean, it was pretty egregious. And I remember I went to my colleagues and mentors in the department. I was like, oh, I have the situation that I need to do something about. And I assumed that I was just going to report it to, the dean, and they were going to take care of it. And they said, oh, well, actually, you have to meet with the student and then you decide what's going to happen. And when I realized that I alone had to make the decision about how to handle it and like come up with some punishment, I felt really uncomfortable. I thought, well, wait a minute, aren't there people that should be weighing in on this or helping make this decision in light of how other students are treated when they do the same thing? And so the lack of having any system in place that actually involved a group of people, whether it's students or a combination of students and faculty, that was hard for me because the burden was then on me. And as we know, faculty do not like to do this work. This is not, this is one of the least favorite things among faculty members, handling cases of dishonesty. So I was excited to come into a system that was built and that, although not perfect, has a process that feels like a student is protected, that other people have their eyes on the work, and they're saying, you know, okay, this is how we generally handle these cases, and that it's more fair and consistent.
That's yeah. Having lived in them myself, I feel like all of those things are true. Would it be fair to say that honor systems are much more about creating this context that prevents cheating as opposed to the policies that do?
Yeah, I think I have always tried to focus my work as much as I can on prevention rather than detection and punishment, because A, that's not much fun. You can get really bogged down by trying to catch students cheat. So I feel like if you do all your work on the front end of it, all the preventative work, and do everything you can to lead them down the path of where you want them, how you want them to conduct their work, then you can avoid a lot of this. A lot of the situations that I witnessed as being on the committee, I thought, wow, if the faculty member had just been a little more clear about how they wanted their students to do their work, we wouldn't be sitting here. Um, so I do think that their educational pieces as well, but the honor code to me is like this sort of like a way to frame academic integrity for students. So it does make it easier when that's a part of the culture and a part of the system to say, let me explain to you. I'm not going to just say follow the honor code. I'm going to actually go through a set of a framework that I have that I've been working on with students when I assign. Really, I can use it for anything, but particularly larger assignments. I spend a lot of time framing them around academic integrity before the students do the work versus after the fact, so that I have used all the tools ahead of time to prevent them from making the wrong decision about their work, because I've actually told them how to conduct their work. And I know when we get to the what would you tell other people, that's a big one for me, is how you frame work for students ahead of time. And using an honor code is great, but you can do it without an honor code as well.
Yeah, most of the people who are watching this are probably not in honor code contexts, and in fact might not even be able to use them depending on where they are. And of course, we are in the age of AI. There's no question. Has AI changed the way you think about honor codes, and has it changed the advice you might give to somebody working outside of an honor code context?
That's funny about AI. So I guess the biggest, if in terms of the roles I play at the college, I will say this: we have seen more cases of AI. So obviously it's permeating the system itself, right? Having to now adjudicate cases where students use AI to do their work. So that has obviously, that's new because we didn't have that before just a few years ago. And it's much more available, and every day there's a new technology. So I think that has permeated the system itself, and the number of cases, and how those are handled. And we've been working on an AI, sorry, artificial intelligence, the two AIs together, policy at the college to really help students and faculty navigate AI use, to clarify when it's okay and when it's not, and then how that goes into the honor code system and adjudication system. So AI has permeated that a lot. I would say that for me, I teach a lot of research classes and a lot of writing intensive classes where they're writing about research, and they're doing things like literature reviews. And so one thing that happened to me in one of my classes back in the fall was that because I talk to my students ahead of time and I tell them how I want them to do their work and how to follow sort of this path of integrity as you write, and all the tools and tricks to make sure that you're doing it correctly. I had told them that this writing intensive class that I was primarily working on them learning how to write in psychology, how to write scientifically in our discipline. And so if they had built-in tools like Grammarly that were helping them, spelling, grammar, stuff like that, that because that was not a learning goal particularly, that they were allowed to use them. And they're also built in to their word processing. So it's okay. And then something happened. I was unaware that there was an update and that Grammarly Pro had come out over the summer,
Mm.
right? And this is where I'm going with my advice as well. So this new version of Grammarly had come out. Well, they didn't tell me. I did find out because eventually a student told me when I said, there's something off about your paper. And she said, well, I use Grammarly Pro, which is a very different version of Grammarly, which will rewrite and edit pretty extensively anything that you write. And so I had to go back to the students and say, I need to change what I said to you about Grammarly. When I first said it, I was under this impression, and now with this new knowledge about this, this tool that has really evolved pretty significantly, you can't do that. And I wrote, and it's explicitly in the syllabus. And I don't mention particular tools, but I write what the tools do, right? They can't summarize, rewrite. I kind of write very specifically what those tools do, and I that's where I'm drawing the line. So I help them create that boundary where they understand how a tool could help them fix some small writing things, but not write for them. Um, so AI has changed again my framework and my instructions for how students can conduct their work for sure. I think there was another question I was supposed to answer.
That was pretty great. Well, as time starts to wind down, what would you leave somebody, given that you've been thinking about both AIs for as long as you have, and you've been teaching for as long as you have? What's one tangible, concrete thing you think that someone who's new to artificial intelligence or teaching for academic integrity could do next semester that could make a big difference without a huge amount of change?
Like you and Trisha, I really believe that even though AI has introduced rapidly a whole set of tools that are very disconcerting and dizzying, I still feel like that all the things that you do for academic integrity before AI, you can continue to do those same things pretty effectively. And so there's something I'm working on right now, but I'll say this. I think there are three questions that you could address with students at the beginning of your class and at the beginning of any kind of big assignment, assessment, or test. And that is, it's a what, why, and how. Those three questions. And if you apply that to academic integrity in the context of a specific assignment or project or work, it really can help students understand why and how you're trying to get them to learn. So the first is, you have to tell students what is academic integrity and what is it in your class, not just in these vague terms, but what does it mean in your particular class, with examples. So you have to do that. The second thing that I think is almost more important than the what is the why is academic integrity important or relevant to the student in the context of the class. So what I often do is I talk about the discipline of psychology. Oh, we're going to write a literature review. One of the learning goals is for you to learn how to write this in a very particular way. And this is something you do in our discipline. And you do this to do research, to write grants. And that the learning goal is for you to learn how to do this. So I need you to do it in a particular way so I can see what you've mastered and what you need help on, where you need feedback. And so when you do the why is it important, I have to say the students really are like, I've not thought about it that way. Sometimes I talk about unearned credit and authorship, right? I use all these terms about if you were going to publish something or write a grant, and this notion of fairness, and they get it. When you frame it in a way that connects directly to what they're doing, they get it. And they see the value of it. And I think that's so important. So it's tying the work they're doing to academic integrity, but also to the learning goals in the class, and then to their future and what it means for them if they want to be in a particular kind of job or work. But the last thing is, how do you want them to conduct their work? And because I teach a lot of research classes. I teach statistics, and we go into the computer lab and we do SPSS, right? And they get these 10 pages of printouts and they're like, "Oh, Dr. Tatum, which what is the number here?" Like, and it's hard to learn at first, to dig through all this information and find the answer. And so what I did one time, and it works so well, I always do it. One time I said, "Okay, let me explain how you do this with integrity." um, if you're running this analysis in SPSS and you're like, I forgot which button to push, you can turn to your peer over there and say, is this what we were, is this how we were supposed to do it? Just to double check. Or if you want it, you get that output and you're like, oh, does this output look like your output? Because that is facilitating learning. But when it gets to the point where you have to write up those results, because I need to know that you know how to do it, and I need to be able to give you feedback. And if you don't do it right, that's okay, because there are opportunities to master this, right? You build that in. I need you to write that all by yourself. I need to make sure that when everything that you wrote down and you gave to me with your name on it is your work alone. And so I drew the line or the boundary at that, where you could collaborate and where you couldn't. And but I explained why. And I also explained you have an opportunity to learn. I had a student come up to me and say, "Thank you so much for telling me that. That was so helpful." And I was like, okay, it worked. Like, it was like nobody had ever been that specific with the students. And I think that one student was like, wow, I know what to do. And I just feel like at the end of the day, I want to know that I did all the things I could do to make the student successful, help them make the right decisions, and know how to do the work with integrity, so that if they make a different choice, I did everything I could to make them successful. And it makes that hard, difficult conversation much less difficult, because you said, "Hey, remember when we talked about this? And remember I gave you examples? And remember when?" And then they just go, "Oh, yeah." you know?
Yeah,
So,
no, I hear that. It definitely could make a huge difference on the back end if you set it up in the beginning.
yeah.
Well, Holly Tatum, my longtime collaborator, colleague, friend, professor of psychology at Randolph College in Lynchburg, Virginia. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for the advice for everyone. I'm sure that our listeners, watchers, and readers will get a lot out of your feedback. So thanks again.
Sure. Thanks. And congratulations on the book. I'm really excited about it.
Thank you.